Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second day of the online class. Today, I'm going to discuss with you the topic which I already posted a few of them, but then again, those are just considered to be supplementary to what I will be presenting this afternoon. Okay, so we will begin our topic on speech communication. All right. So, the process by which meanings are exchanged between people through the use of common set of symbols is called communication. So, we would always hear that term over and over again from people around us, in all our classes. We would always hear the idea or the term communication. So, now we will be talking more about it. But we will not simply be discussing about communication as communication alone. We will have to add something more to that, and the word would be the proper adjective that we will add to the word communication would be effective communication. So, effective communication is more than just exchanging information. It's about understanding the emotion and intentions between the information, as well as being able to clearly convey a message. You need to also listen in a way that gains the full meaning of what's being said and what makes other person feel heard and understood. Effective communication sounds like it should be instinctive. But all too often, when we try to communicate with others, sometimes or something goes astray. We say one thing, then the other person hears something else. And there, misunderstandings, frustrations, conflicts ensue. So this can cause problem not only in our home, our school, and even with our work relationships. So for many of us, communicating more clearly and effectively requires learning some important skills. Whether you're trying to improve communication with your kids, with your boss, or workers, okay, all of this learning these skills can deepen your connections to others, build not only greater trust but also respect. It also improves teamwork, problem solving, and the bottom line is it improves your overall social and emotional health. Okay? So that is what we mean by effective communication. What is speech communication then? So, speech communication came from the Latin word communis, meaning to share. So, share your thoughts, share ideas, feelings, of course, through the use of a very special medium, which is the language. It is defined as a process by which we assign and convey meaning in an attempt to create shared understanding. So this process requires a vast repertoire of skills in intrapersonal and interpersonal processing. Listening, observing, speaking, questioning, analyzing, and evaluating. So let's first discuss about the skills in intrapersonal. So why do we need to possess intrapersonal skills? So of course, when we communicate with others, we have to think about the feelings of others. So before we utter any word towards others, we also have to think about their feelings. So you do what you call intrapersonal communication by talking to yourself. Like you ask yourself, if I'm going to say this, will this person not be offended? Or if I'll say this, will the person be happy about it? Or will he or she find it offensive? So that's there's reflection involved there. And then if we talk about interpersonal processing, this is a very very important skill that we have to achieve, no, not only as a learner but even as would be teachers or even as members of our family or even in our community. So interpersonal skills is your way of, I mean, these are the skills that you possess in interacting with people around you. You have to be so good in dealing with others. Of course, you have to be very careful with what you say. You have to be courteous. You have to be polite all the time so that people will not misinterpret your actions. And then, of course, in speech communication, your listening skill is very important. So as we always say that listening is the beginning of understanding. Listening is the skill that's considered to be the most taken for granted of all the skills, but it is the most used. Like 80% of our day is spent through listening. So we undergo listening all the time, no? We undergo sensation, that is when there's a message being given by the speaker. As a listener, we undergo the process of sensation, interpretation, and comprehension. So when we reach the level of comprehension, that's the time when we are able to give our feedbacks. Okay, so next would be, of course, observing. So um, as a as a person, for us to have a better speech, for us to be a good conversationalist, we have to be a good observer. We observe people's reactions, no? We observe people's what do you call this, responses to what we say, okay, people's reactions and responses. So observe human interactions and observe human behavior as well. It will help us when we deliver speech. And then, of course, the most important of all as well is speaking. So we have to be a good speaker. We have to be able to convey our message as clearly as possible by enunciating every sound of the letter in the word or of the word, no? We should be able to pronounce the words clearly, and that we have to use proper intonation pattern. We have to use proper what do you call this, pitch when we speak. And then we also have to possess the questioning skill. Of course, when we have a one-on-one conversation with someone, we just don't indulge in listening all throughout. We also ask questions, right? So as we listen, there are a lot of questions that are popping in our mind. Thus, we also tend to seek for clarification by asking questions. And then we do analyze whatever it is that we hear, and then we also express our ideas by giving our own analysis, and of course by giving our judgments or our evaluation. So use of all these processes is developmental. Okay, so when we say developmental, you don't acquire them in just one click. Okay, you acquire them little by little, or in a very systematic or in a very gradual way. Okay, and it transfers to all the areas of our lives. So as I mentioned a while ago, it can affect our home, our school, community, work, and even beyond. So it is through communication that collaboration and cooperation occur. With proper communication, I'm sure you have experienced it back when you were still with your classmates in many of your subjects before, at which you were able to successfully present something, or you were able to successfully achieve what you needed to achieve. And of course, you did that because of communication. All right, so let's move on. Something is wrong with my slide. All right, so let's take a look at the picture. In this picture, you will notice there are two individuals. Okay, and there's one arrow from one person to another. Can you consider it to be communication? Will there still be communication if you look at this? They use the medium of newspaper and then broadcast, and then I think that's a microphone, the other one. So that's one of the levels, though. That's one of the levels of communication. But if we really talk about communication, it's actually a two-way process. So two-way process in the sense that there are two important elements: the speaker and the listener. So you also call the speaker as the communicator or the encoder of the message. So that's the who gives the message, and then the receiver is definitely the listener, or the one who decodes the message. So the communicator is the who gives the message, and what does he say? Okay, he says what. So what's the message, and then what medium was used, in what way was it delivered, and then to whom was the message for. So the to whom would be the receiver. So the communicator gives the message through a particular medium, and the receiver gets the message. The receiver undergoes the listening process of sensation, interpretation, and comprehension. And once the receiver understands the message, he will now give his or her response. Okay, with that effect, there's a what you call response or feedback. This time, the receiver becomes the speaker, and the speaker this time becomes the listener. That makes it a two-way process. So we play a dual role in the communication process. We don't only play as the speaker, but we also play as the listener. So I hope I'm making myself clear. So I want you to take a look at this 7 C's of effective communication. So these are all applicable to both written as well as oral communication. So when you write, you also have to follow the 7 C's, and when you express yourself orally, you also have to be very particular with the 7 C's of communication. So let's begin with completeness. So completeness is it's up to you as to how you will be able to find it, but they're all there. So let's begin with completeness. The communication must be complete. Okay, so an incomplete communication, of course, you will know where it will be led to. It will be led to miscommunication. So it should convey all the facts required by the audience. Okay, so whatever facts that the audience need, you should be able, as a speaker, you should be able to provide them with that. In the situation when you are expressing, or when you are telling them or giving them something, they won't be anymore asking for more questions, because almost all the questions that they have in mind were already answered, because you are giving them a very complete you give them all the facts that are required by them. So the sender of the message must take into consideration the receiver's mindset and convey the message accordingly. Okay, so the next would be conciseness. So when we say conciseness, it means wordiness. So you should refrain from being too wordy. We have this tendency to be too wordy, but why not economize? Okay, so communicating what you want to convey in least possible words without foregoing the other C's of communication. So it is a necessity for effective communication all the time, because it's not only time saving, it also highlights the main message, and it avoids what you call mga needless words or excessive words. Next, we have the consideration. So when you say consideration, it implies you step on the shoes of others. So effective communication must take the audience into consideration. Like you look into the audience viewpoint, you think about their background, you also think about their mindset, no, their level. Okay, so you make an attempt to envisage your audience, so, and their requirements as well as their emotions, as well as their problems. So that's what we call consideration. So you don't talk or you don't say things that your audience might not be comfortable in listening to or in hearing to. Okay, then we have the clarity. Okay, so what's clarity? Clarity implies emphasizing on a specific message or goal at a time rather than trying to achieve too much at once. Okay, so clarity in communication makes understanding easier, and of course all of us know that clear message makes use of exact, appropriate, and definitely concrete words. Next would be concreteness. So concrete communication implies being able, being particular and clear rather than fuzzy and general. So when you say concreteness, it actually strengthens the confidence. So what do we understand by concrete message? It has the following features. It is supported with specific facts and figures. So if you say that this person is beautiful, so what are the figures, what are the facts that will help you support your claim that this person is beautiful? So it also makes use of words that are clear and they are not misinterpreted. Okay, next is one of the very important C's as well, the courtesy. So courtesy in message implies that the message should show the sender's expression as well as should respect the receiver. So the sender of the message should be sincerely polite, reflective, and enthusiastic. So what do we understand by, or how do we say, when do we say that the message is courteous? It has the following features. So courtesy implies taking into consideration the viewpoints, both viewpoints as well as feelings of the receiver of the message. So it should also be, your message should be positive and focused at the audience. Next we have we have the correctness. Correctness in communication implies that there are no grammatical errors in communication. So it has the following features, like the message should be exact, correct, and well timed. Okay, so if the communication is correct, it boosts up, of course, the confidence level. Correct message has greater impact on the audience. Okay, so those are the 7 C's. So the 7 C's will not only, will not only help you in your oral communication, but it will also be very useful in the written communication. So we now proceed with the types of communication. So there are 2 types of communication. We have the nonverbal communication and the verbal communication. So let's start with the verbal communication. So verbal communication is actually the use of language to transfer information through speaking, or it can be through sign language. This is definitely one of the most common types, often used during presentations, video conferences, phone calls, meetings, and on one-on-one conversations. So verbal communication is important because it is efficient. It can be helpful to support verbal communicate. It's helpful to support verbal communication with, of course, both the nonverbal. Okay, the nonverbal would also help complete the verbal communication. On the other hand, we have the nonverbal. So what's nonverbal? Nonverbal communication is the use of body language, gestures, facial expressions to convey information to others. So it can be both intentionally and it can also be unintentionally. For example, you might smile unintentionally when you hear a pleasing or enjoyable idea or piece of information. So nonverbal communication is helpful when you're trying to understand others' thoughts and feelings. So sometimes we would rely more on the nonverbal, because as what they would always say, that actions speak louder than words. Okay, so there are also other forms of communication. We have the oral communication and the written communication. So let's start with oral communication. When you say oral communication, it is the ability to talk with others, to give and exchange information and ideas, such as you ask questions, you give directions, you coordinate work tasks, explain, and persuade by using, of course, oral, no, words of mouth. How we use this skill? We use this to greet people and take messages, when we try to reassure, when we try to comfort people, when we try to persuade others, when we seek and give information. We try to use also oral communication when we are resolving conflicts or facilitating or leading the group. So here you have the different advantages of oral communication. So if you prefer oral communication, it's economical, no, because it's already face to face. You immediately tell what you want to tell the other person, because the other person is already there in front of you. Okay, there's personal touch because you see each other, there's eye contact, you listen to each other's voices, you see each other's, what you call this, facial expression, no, body language, body movements. And then you can maintain secrecy, no, when you are talking to one another, because there's no evidence in black and white. Do you get what I mean? Like when you're chatting, anybody can just screenshot whatever it is that you said and use it as an evidence against you. But if it's orally transferred, they will, unless they recorded your voice, but if it's not, then it will remain a secret. So their speed, no, effective and efficient, then very motivating. Why? Because you look at the face, you listen to the voice, you look at the body movement. So there's really motivation on the part of the listener to continue listening. And then there's flexibility. So when you say flexibility, you make your voice louder when the listener is a little far from you, and then you can make your voice softer when the speaker is near you. So there's flexibility. And then quick feedback. So immediately, if you want an answer, there's an instant answer if it's oral communication, because the question would be, will you be going? Then the initial response would be yes, no, I won't, yes, I'll go. Okay. And of course, it also encourages what you call harmonious relationships, because you develop relationships and friendships when you are into oral communication. But there are also disadvantages. Okay, so when your message is too long, just like right now, the message is too long, so my voice, I'm already having a hoarse voice here. So, and then for lengthy message, it's not good when you use oral, no, because again, our listening skill is not really that good, so we can only give our attention through listening for only some minutes. And then it's an expensive method. Why do you think it's an expensive method? Because you really have to be in the place. Let's say, for example, you were invited to go to a restaurant for you to have the conversation. So you'll have to spend money to go there. And then lack of clarity. Lack of clarity in the sense that everything is economized. So you need an explanation, but the explanation is not really comprehensive, just a few explanation. And then lack of written proof, of course, and then there's misuse of time. So what are the different methods of oral communication? So we have the face-to-face conversation, that is when you're having a conversation with a friend face-to-face, and then telephonic talk, that is when you're having a conversation with someone over the phone, and then like meetings, conferences, seminars, and lectures, and of course radio and television. Okay. So we'll end here for now. So the example of oral communication will be in another slide.